I sensed something wasn't right long before that night. Still, I kept brushing it off, convincing myself it was just a rough patch. You know the feeling. When you're sitting across from someone you built a life with, someone you've loved for years, and suddenly they feel like a stranger. That was me on Thursday night, 8:12 p.m., sitting opposite my wife at the same oak dining table we picked out together 6 years ago. I was holding on to something that clearly no longer wanted to be held. Dinner was warm, salmon, rice, and roasted vegetables. I'd made it myself. Thursdays were my night to cook. She used to adore that about me. Back then, she'd perch on the kitchen counter, smile at me, and tease that I looked sexy in an apron. But tonight, she didn't even glance at her plate. Her eyes stayed glued to her phone, the glow from the screen painting her face in pale light, cold, almost sterile, like a flashlight in the dark. She hadn't said a single word since we sat down. I cleared my throat gently. "Long day?" I asked, hoping to spark even the smallest conversation. Just say something, anything. Still, she didn't lift her eyes. Her fingers kept scrolling, her thumb moving across the screen, locked into whatever held her attention. Something clearly more important than me. There was a vacancy in her expression, not angry, not emotional, just gone, like her soul had already moved on and left me behind. A ghost still haunting a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. I tried again, my voice softer this time. "Everything okay?" Finally, she set her phone down. But not to talk, not to connect. She stared at her plate and pushed the food around with her fork, like it disgusted her. Then came a sigh. And with it, "I'm just tired." That was it. No eye contact. No warmth. Just those 3 words delivered with a flatness that somehow hurt more than shouting. Apathy always cuts deeper than anger. Trying to break the tension, I slowly reached across the table, cautious like I was approaching something delicate. I laid my hand gently over hers. That's when it happened. She pulled her hand away like I'd burned her. "Don't," she snapped. I froze. For a brief second, she looked at me, and the eyes that used to hold so much softness were cold, empty, glassy. "Don't touch me tonight," she said, barely audible, like she didn't even want the words to exist. I didn't respond, didn't flinch. I just nodded and kept eating, pretending her words weren't tearing something apart inside me, but something fractured deep down. It wasn't just rejection, it was confirmation. I'd sensed it for months. The growing distance. How she stopped kissing me goodbye. The way she turned her body away from me in bed. Every conversation stripped down to logistics instead of connection. And now, she couldn't even stand my touch. There's something deeply humiliating about your own wife recoiling from you like your affection is a burden. After dinner, she went straight to the bedroom. Didn't even glance at me as she walked past. I sat there for what felt like forever, just staring at the empty chair across the table. I felt pathetic. A man clinging to a love that had checked out long ago. Eventually, I stood up and washed the dishes in silence. She never said goodnight. Never asked how my day had been. She just didn't care. And I couldn't sleep. So I left the house. It was close to midnight. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just walked, wandered through the neighborhood, past quiet homes, flickering streetlights, the scent of damp asphalt and chimney smoke in the air. I passed the house with the porch swing, the one where we used to sit in the early days, back when she'd lean her head on my shoulder and talk to me about everything and nothing. I could still faintly recall the way her laughter used to drift down the block like music. Now, I couldn't even remember the last time that sound was meant for me. I walked past the old cafe where we once had our first real argument. Ended with tearful smiles and long, apologetic kisses 2 hours later. Back then, she used to fight for us. These days, I can't even get her to speak. As I wandered through those dimly lit streets, my mind became a reel of old moments playing on loop. I remembered how she used to meet me at the door, arms open, like she'd been waiting all day just to see me. Now, she's already in bed by the time I come home. I used to get a soft kiss on the neck after dinner, her fingers laced through mine, her voice saying I smelled good. Now, she flinches if I brush against her by accident. There was a time she whispered, "I love you," like it was a sacred truth. Last night, the only thing she whispered was, "Don't touch me tonight." And somehow, that quiet sentence carried more weight than 100 screaming matches. That night, under the amber glow of flickering street lamps, I think something inside me shut off, not in a blaze of anger, but like a light bulb quietly burning out. I wasn't mad. I was just done. Done begging for scraps of connection. Done trying to resuscitate something already cold. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I simply let go. And that's worse in a way. Because when hope leaves a man, he doesn't shout. He just starts packing his soul away in silence. When I finally came back, the house felt colder than the night air. She was either asleep or pretending to be. I paused in the doorway, staring at her back, turned to me. Her hair was pulled up, her breath steady, no space left for me in that bed or in her heart. I climbed in beside her, without saying a word, turned away, and in my head, I whisper a farewell I never intended to speak aloud. This is the last time I ask for love. Tomorrow, I vanish. Sleep never came. I stare at the ceiling, counting the seconds between us like miles. It wasn't the kind of silence that brings peace. It was the kind that feels like suffocation beside someone who doesn't even notice you're gasping. Around 4:30 a.m., I got out of bed quietly, careful not to disturb the woman who no longer saw me. I stood there at the foot of the bed, just looking at her. She was curled toward the wall, wrapped in that soft gray blanket I gave her for our 3rd anniversary. She looked content, untouched by the ache she left behind. And in that moment, it hit me. It wasn't just our marriage that was over. The version of her I fell for, the one who used to beam when I walked through the door, who danced barefoot with me in the kitchen, who said she felt safe in my arms. That woman was gone. Maybe she changed. Maybe I did. Maybe life just wore both of us down. I didn't know. But whatever remained, it wasn't love anymore. Strangely, I wasn't furious. I didn't feel betrayed. What I felt was colder, but clearer. Relief. A sad sort of freedom. Like taking off a weight I didn't even know I'd been carrying. I walked to the closet, opened the drawer, and pulled out that old duffel bag we used for weekend getaways, back when touching each other was second nature. I packed a few shirts, jeans, toothbrush, phone charger, passport, wallet, just the essentials. I didn't rush. I was calm, calmer than I'd been in a long time. I went to the kitchen and sat at the same table where she'd pulled her hand away the night before. The same table where she used to laugh over coffee. Now it felt as cold as stone. I grabbed a sticky note from the drawer and wrote 4 plain words. Take care of yourself. That was all. No dramatic farewell. No please. Just closure. I placed it where she'd see it. Took one last look at the house. The photos on the walls mocked me. Images of 2 people frozen in time, pretending nothing ever changed. I considered taking the wedding picture with me, but I didn't. I just stared at it a second, then turned and walked out. The sun hadn't even risen yet. The world was silent, still asleep. I left behind everything but a small bag and a heart worn thin. I didn't know where I was heading. I just drove. No music, no plan, just rode in silence. Eventually, I found myself parked outside a 24-hour diner. I parked in an empty lot and stared at the steering wheel like it might give me answers. Minutes passed, or maybe an hour, before I finally turned the key again and let the engine pull me forward. I didn't know where I was heading, just that I couldn't go back. Eventually, I checked into a rundown motel on the edge of town. $42 for the night. The place reeked of mildew, cigarette smoke, and regret, but the man at the front desk didn't ask a single question. That was all I needed. The room came with a single flickering lamp, a chair that looked like it belonged to a junkyard, and a bed that creaked if you even looked at it. I dropped my bag, sat at the edge of that mattress, and exhaled. There was a strange stillness inside me. I wasn't shattered, just hollow. I had always imagined that walking away would feel catastrophic, that it would come with sobbing, guilt, and second-guessing. But instead, there was only peace. Not joy, not relief, just the quiet that follows when you stop pretending. I wasn't happy. But for the first time in a long while, I was real. And sometimes that's where healing begins. I didn't check messages, didn't answer calls. I powered down my phone and let the rest of the world spin without me. I sat in that dingy motel room, sipping awful coffee from a vending machine, staring at the cracked ceiling, and thinking about everything I had poured into that relationship. The patience, the understanding, the nights I held her while she cried, the days I bit my tongue to keep the peace. I remembered the sacrifices I made while she grew more distant, and I finally understood she wasn't the villain of the story. But I wasn't going to play the victim anymore either. Later that night, I drove over to Eric's place. He had a garage behind his house where he worked on projects. I didn't want to unpack the whole situation, so I just asked, "Mind if I crash here for a few days?" He looked at me, really looked, and nodded like he understood without needing the details. "You already know you're welcome," he said. I dropped my bag, collapsed onto an old couch splattered with paint and sawdust, and fell asleep. No nightmares. No tossing and turning. No waking up beside someone who made me feel invisible. Just rest. I didn't have a roadmap. No place to stay long term. No grand plan. Just a small duffel, a tired heart, and the decision to start over. But for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Not because I left her, but because I finally chose myself. 3 days passed before I turned my phone back on. One message waited for me. "Can we talk?" I stared at it. No anger. No hope. Just silence. I turned the phone off and shoved it into a drawer. The following day, she called 4 times. Then she called Eric. 2 days later, she showed up at his door. I watched from the garage window as she knocked, like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't looked at me that night and said, "Don't touch me." Like I had become a ghost in my own home. Eric answered. She looked exhausted. Shadows under her eyes. Hair a mess. Voice trembling. "Is he here?" she asked. Eric shook his head. "He's not ready. You need to give him space." "I didn't mean it like that," she whispered. "I was just tired. I didn't think he'd really leave." Eric didn't say much. Just crossed his arms and waited. She left in tears. And for a fleeting moment, I felt something. Not satisfaction. Not victory. Just clarity. She never believed I'd walk away. She thought I'd always be there, no matter how cold she became, no matter how long I spent pretending we were okay. She was wrong. 2 weeks later, I left town completely. Moved 2 states over. Rented a modest apartment above a garage in a quiet neighborhood. Found work in logistics, not glamorous, but stable. And best of all, no one knew me. I wasn't anyone's husband. I was just Jake, the new guy who showed up on time and kept to himself. I made a rule, no contact. I blocked her number, scrubbed my social media, and swore I wouldn't go back. I didn't want closure. I didn't want to hear apologies. I didn't want to return to a place where I had to beg to matter. I joined a gym nearby. At first, I hated it. My body was tired, and so was my spirit. But I kept going, not to impress anyone, not out of spite, just to reclaim something of myself. I built discipline. I built habits. I started building me again. Up at 6. Workout. Shower. Work. Dinner. Books. Walks. Sleep. Slowly, the storm in my mind settled. I wasn't as reactive. I stopped overthinking. I found balance. People at work started calling me the calm guy, the one who didn't talk much but seemed grounded. That wasn't who I used to be. I used to scramble to fix things. If she was upset, I would rearrange my entire day to make it better. I used to bring home flowers when she grew distant. I lived on eggshells in a marriage that was falling apart while I tried desperately to keep it together. Now, I don't chase anything. The pain became distance, and distance became indifference. I stopped wondering what she was doing or how she was feeling. She became like an old favorite song, one you don't hate but no longer fits who you are. Almost a year passed before I saw her again. I was downtown for a work conference, standing in line for coffee at a small cafe. She spotted me first. "Jake!" I turned. She looked different. older, worn out. Her coat was wrinkled, hair pinned back, makeup barely hanging on. But her eyes, they lit up like she was seeing a ghost. "Oh my God," she said. "You look—" Her voice trailed off. "Hey," I said calmly. She stepped closer. "I've been looking for you for months. I didn't know if you were okay." "I'm good," I said. No warmth, no bitterness, just truth. "You look amazing," she said, astonished. "You've really changed." I gave her a polite nod. "Yeah, I guess I have." There was a pause, the kind that holds 1,000 things unsaid. Then she whispered, "I never stopped thinking about you. What I said that night, I didn't mean it. I was overwhelmed." I raised my hand gently. "You don't need to explain." Her eyes filled with tears. "I made a mistake." I nodded once. We both did. She looked up, searching for something. "Is there any chance we could talk?" "Just talk." I glanced at my watch. My coffee was ready. I picked it up, looked her in the eye one final time, and said, "Take care of yourself." Then I walked out. No drama, no anger. Just a man who'd already let go long before. As I stepped into the sunlight, the wind brushing against my face and coffee warming my hand, a quiet truth settled over me. I didn't leave her to hurt her. I left to rescue myself. And sometimes, the strongest form of closure isn't a fight or a dramatic exit. It's becoming everything you were meant to be. Quietly, confidently, far away from the person who once made you feel small. She lost me the moment she whispered, "Don't touch me tonight." And I found myself the moment I replied, "Goodbye."